Hi, everyone. Your host, Amanda here. Before we dive into today's episode, I'm excited to let you know that my recent TEDx talk on the future of work is now live. I tackle all the ways that work is broken and how, if we let them, Gen Z can help us fix it. Check out the show notes of this episode for a link to watch the full talk. Welcome to Season 7 of Design Nerds Anonymous, the podcast that sparks curiosity at the intersection of business and design. I'm your host, Amanda Schneider. This season, we're looking beyond our industry, exploring bold strategies from unexpected places to help us rethink how we engage and connect. And today, we're doing something special. Think back to the last major event you attended. Maybe it was a packed trade show floor, a high-energy networking session, or perhaps an intimate panel discussion. Now compare that experience to one from 5 years ago. Chances are, things have changed. But what if they haven't? The pandemic forced rapid innovation in the events industry. But as in-person attendance surges, many are simply reverting to the way things were. So the question is, will that sustain demand, or will it risk making events feel outdated? Those who win in the future of events won't just bring people together. They'll reframe what events mean for this era. So what's next? Today, we're bringing back our first ever return guest to find out. In 2021, we interviewed Marco Ghiberti, a leading voice in the live event space, about the future of industry gatherings. Now, just a few years later, we're revisiting his predictions, unpacking what came true and exploring what's next. Marco Ghiberti is an entrepreneur, investor, founder, and CEO of Vesuvio Ventures. He's spent decades shaping the live events industry. He's also the co-author of The Face of Digital and Reinventing Live, two books that explore how digital transformation is reshaping how we connect. We'll break down why in-person events are thriving, how smart brands are turning them into year-round experiences, and why those who embrace data and AI will lead in the next evolution of events. And if you want to go back and compare, our original 2021 conversation with Marco is still available, and we'll link that in the show notes. We're just getting started. A quick pause, then we're back.
Hi, this is Chaz Amadon, Vice President at Palladian West. We all know that great companies rise from having great leaders aboard. At Palladian West, our mission is to accelerate impact by recruiting great leaders to your organization. In our experience, the best leaders aren't applying to your job postings. You have to go find them, and that's where we step in. With 2 decades of work in the industry, we specialize in expert executive search across the commercial interiors ecosystem, manufacturers, dealers, design firms, and more. A lot of people ask us, what makes you different? And we love answering that question. Number one is we search for the best, not first talent. We'll work long and hard to find that 360-degree fit, not just a fit on paper. Second, we bring you industry insights, such as pay benchmarking and talent trends, so you can make informed decisions about running your business. And third, our favorite, is that we believe recruiting is human. We harness a high-touch approach with our clients and every candidate we work with. Just ask some of our partners in the industry we've worked with for over 10 years. Relationships are at the very core of what we do. So if you're considering the next big addition to your team, one that accelerates impact in your company, we hope you call us at Palladian West to be your partner.
All right, here's Marco. You are officially one of our first repeat guests on Design Nerds Anonymous, which both is a proud moment for me, saying that we have made it this far and our show is doing this well, and also should be a proud moment for you that you're the first guest that we've asked back a second time.
Thank you for having me, and it's a lot of pressure. I'll do my best to deliver.
Wonderful. For those that have not listened to your previous episode, would you just take a quick moment and introduce yourself and tell us why events are so important and near and dear to your heart?
My name is Marco Ghiberti. I'm around events for more than 30 years now. I started my career with Apple as a marketing person, and events was part of my role. And I immediately got in love with events as a marketing tool. I quit Apple, started my events company, and since those days, I organized more than 500 events, from corporate events, big trade shows, conferences, festivals. Also, I invest in event technology and innovation, which is close to my heart. And I'm pretty involved in the US events industry, trying to support the new generation of events entrepreneurs.
Wonderful. I read your book. It was one of my favorite reads in 2021 when we had you on the first time. And I'm super excited to dive in today and get an update on where things are. One of the things I loved about your previous interview is you really did a good job of stating that we're not just talking to event organizers. So if you're not an organizer of a major trade show, this is still for you because you look at events in total, not just for the organizers, but also the sponsors of those events, the participants of those events. So tell me where we're at as you think about those broader audiences.
I would say that are more important than ever because we learned some hard lessons during the pandemic. Events is a broad category: corporate events, association events, trade shows, weddings, social, sports, festivals, music, you name it. Event is a multi-trillion industry and nobody knows how big is it. That's the problem. I think that we learned that there is one key component that I mentioned many times on my book, which is replacing the human connection is extremely difficult for business and also for entertainment. I would rather go to a concert instead of watching the concert on YouTube or on my TV. Same thing with the sports games, same thing with a trade show or conference. We learned that we can educate ourselves online more effectively. Yes, COVID was a huge wake-up call on that. And now I will think twice before jumping on a plane to Singapore and spend a week if it's just for education. The other parts of the business, the meeting, the product demo, the conversation, the serendipity, the fun stuff, we learned that is extremely difficult to replace. And because of that, events are back, growing faster than pre-COVID. And every single events category is beating records. And we are pretty bullish about the power of events.
Do you have any stats about that industry growth in events?
Yes, trade shows as a category is 10 to 20% bigger than pre-COVID in general, which is massive.
That's massive.
Of course, there are differences in regions and verticals and whatever, but trade shows are bigger than pre-COVID. And everyone was thinking, if we come back to COVID level, pre-COVID level is going to be 2025. That happened last year. Investment is higher than ever. Valuations on trade shows and conferences are higher than ever. If you want to buy a good event, you're going to pay premium because there's a ton of private equity capital plus strategic public companies buying events, which means when investors are deploying capital, it's a clear signal that the opportunity is there in the middle long term. And that's what I'm seeing.
Fascinating. I want to dive into some of your statements from last time to see if they've changed, how they've changed, and even maybe a few of your predictions to see where those have landed. In your previous interview, you challenged that the 800-year-old events industry has pretty much not changed, that really the model that was originally created was successful, and so there hasn't been motivation to change. However, of course, you're optimistic and hopeful that COVID might have been that trigger that gave us motivation to make some long needed improvements, especially for maybe some of the marketers that are looking for ROI. So I'm curious what insight or information you have around, has the pandemic created lasting change to events and what is expected from events? And if so, what do you see as those changes?
I'm always scared when we talk about predictions, and particularly when you're stupid like me and you put those predictions in a book. Don't forget, I wrote Reinventing Life in the middle of the pandemic, which means many of the things that we said with Denzel, my co-author, we were a little bit scared to say those things in the middle of the pandemic when everyone was saying events are dead and they're not coming back. There is no need for events if we can meet like this. The pandemic was a massive tragedy in so many levels, but it was also positive for smart business people who identify specific trends. And in our industry, events, because of the human connection and because of the stuff that I was talking before, smart entrepreneurs were able to identify which things could be done on a digital basis and which things could be done and only could be done face to face. If you fast forward and you analyze what's happening today, in many events categories, events are finally mixing digital and face to face on a way that the customer is benefiting from that. And that's the only thing that matters because event organizers, we can make more or less money. But if the customer is not happy and the NPS is low, it's a short-term gain. Now, the customer is finally saying, okay, I want to go to this event because of networking or meetings or education or a combination of all those things. And they come back and they can measure that in a better way. There's a new generation of event technology companies helping brands and companies to identify events using AI and to participate on those events and to measure return of investment on those events. If you're a marketing person and you deploy time and money on events, most likely your frustration was, I put $1 million at CES. I went to Vegas with my team. We spent 10 days over there. We put $1 million with the whole thing. And now we're back. And we don't know which is the ROI, how many deals, how many leads. Okay, that problem is there for 800 years. It's starting to change on a good way. On a good way for organizers who do their job. On a very bad way for organizers who are not refreshing their events and engaging. I believe that the pandemic was a massive accelerator for this change, and I'm grateful on that front because the industry really needed this.
Interesting. And on that front, do you have any stories about one company, maybe how they invested in these events and how that shifted their approach in response? I heard you say on the last interview, a digital headquarters and an in-person headquarters. But in my view, I think a lot have struggled to merge those digital experiences and those in-person experiences. Is there a show? Is there a investor? Is there a story that you have for us that really exemplifies how a company has shifted in response to some of these changes?
Let me go back to my Apple days. When I was working with Apple, once or twice per year, I took a plane to San Francisco, spent a couple of days in a room with developers or marketing people. And that happened for years in every single corporation. There are traditional events for senior people or for distributors or whatever. Look what Apple is doing right now. And look how they are presenting products on a Hollywood sort of approach where they're basically presenting products via streaming to the whole world and their developers. Companies like Apple and others, they're mixing those sort of things in a way that they use the event as a marketing tool. As an Apple geek, every single time that they announce a new Mac or phone, whatever, I watch the stream because I can't wait to really understand what's going on. And I think that I'm not the only one. There are millions of people like me following the live streaming. But in parallel, they have an event, which is a hybrid event for engineers and or developers or partners. And they're able to combine the whole thing on a way that they have B2C marketing exposure plus B2B plus channels. And they're pretty efficient from a cost perspective and also content. That's an example that I like. Apple is not the only one. There are many other companies doing that. Media companies are starting to use content on a way that it's way more sophisticated than 10 or 15 years ago. And they use content as activation, and they start activating content on a digital basis, and they move some of that content face to face, and they monetize along the road. There are many examples in many different industries. Again, I think that we learn very fast during the pandemic, and smart people were able to capture those learnings and execute into the next generation of events activations. And we're starting to see some pretty cool stuff right now because of that. Mm-hmm. There's another thing. During the pandemic, we had billions of dollars deployed into event technology. Billions and billions. Nobody knows how many, but a lot of money. Many of those companies died because when face-to-face events were back, those companies were focused on virtual events only. But many of those companies survive and pivot into live or hybrid. And that technology is amazing. and it works really well, and it's very affordable. And brands and event organizers and marketing people are using that technology, and they're going to keep using that technology in the long run.
Every design decision tells a story. We'll continue this one after a brief message.
Deep Green is a podcast about how buildings can be designed to make our world a better place. In each episode, we tackle climate change, health crises, economic inequality, and much more, all through the lens of architecture and interior design. I'm Avi Rajagopal, the host of Deep Green and the editor-in-chief of Metropolis, a magazine about how architecture and design shape our future. You can listen to episodes of Deep Green on surroundpodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Message. Thanks for sticking with us.
Can you name any of those companies that have pivoted that are really interesting to you?
In event technology, there's a big company, Cvent is the largest one. They bought many solutions, and they're a very broad portfolio of event technology. Cvent is, 20, 30 years old. They were there before the pandemic, and they're now after the pandemic, and they have a portfolio of solutions for face-to-face and virtual events, which means they were able to survive and adjust. It's owned now by Blackstone, used to be a public company. In the private world, companies like Bizabu, I think that they raised hundreds of millions. They were able to be there before pandemic, pivot into the pandemic, into full virtual, pivot again into hybrid. And they did a fantastic job helping their customers to survive that. And others like Hopin, who raised hundreds or $1 billion company, they die basically because they were focused on digital only.
One of the interesting things about some of the examples you gave, even with Apple, is it feels like the events, if they go to a trade show, it's all an integrated strategy, right? It's across media, it's across their own channels, and it's also across maybe events or in person that they could use. So it's feeling like it's about those stories and how you integrate across physical and digital channels, across your own channels and the outside channels available to you.
And that's exactly the point. If you're an owner of a small and medium business company or a marketing person, now you have a menu of options for digital, hybrid, or face-to-face. The technology is very reliable, affordable, and solid. And you can think, based on your specific industry or customers, which is your event strategy during the whole year in order to give them added value and extract data and leads opportunities from them. And if I talk now with sophisticated, smart marketing people, they know exactly how much money they're going to invest on virtual. Because the other thing is, some people now are saying virtual events are dead. I don't think that they're dead. I think that there is a space for virtual. And I said that on the book. There is a space for hybrid, and there is a space for purely face-to-face. Again, if you're a sophisticated marketing person, you can say, I'm going to allocate X amount of time, money, and resources in virtual, X on hybrid, and X on purely face-to-face, going to trade shows, sponsoring face-to-face events. That analysis, it's way better now because you can combine all those technologies, work with data, analyze ROI, and do a better job investing in events as a category and hopefully extracting significantly more added value from events. The other thing that I believe that everyone understands and shares now is that events is probably the oldest marketing tool, but it's still very relevant. Mm-hmm. And it's not going away, which means I believe that events are going to stick around for a long time because we're humans. We love to talk with each other. We love to connect. We're social animals. And events is by far the best platform for that.
You talked a lot about data, and I want to ask a quick follow-up question there. And then I want to dive into your comment that virtual events aren't dead. As we think about data and ROI, I think that has been the challenges for a lot of the clients that we speak with is how do you measure ROI? So when you think about those in-person events versus synchronous and virtual events versus hybrid events, are there tools that you've seen to measure ROI? What are the pieces of data that you've seen become most effective for measuring the relative success of those strategies?
Yes, you have to split data in 3 layers when you talk about event: pre, on-site and post. 3, there are many tools on capturing data before the event in order to understand your customers' demographic, your customers' desires and goals, and work with them to provide them the right platform on site to achieve those goals. Again, your customers could go to your events for education or networking or product demos or whatever. You need to understand that and give them what they want. Data on site, it's exploding because now through phones plus sensors plus different sort of technologies inside the venue, you can capture and play with that data a lot and provide extra value. In one of our events, we use technology inside the venue to trigger push notifications to your phone and to tell you, hey, Amanda, you are 10 meters away from Marco. He's selling what you want to buy. Do you want to meet? We have a 15-minute slot open. It's a little bit weird and tricky and intimidating, but it's happening. And if you're going to a trade show to extract value and meet as many people as possible, you can probably interact with those sort of technologies. It's already happening. The technology is there. Post-event is the most difficult category, but companies are starting to analyze the data on site and work with marketing platforms in order to follow up those leads and measure ROI year long, which means if I had 25 meetings at the show and I have 60 leads, through these marketing platforms, you can follow that and understand after 12 months, the whole cycle, how many of those deals are now final deals, how many are lost, and how many are still under negotiation. Those sort of companies are helping ROI on a different level, and it's, from my perspective, critical for them to succeed. There are 2 or 3 companies working with AI and data on discovering events. And if you are Apple and you want to sell your product to sports fans because you're selling the iWatch, these companies are telling you these are the shows that you should look because of this data, because of this demographic, because of this content. That's discovery. After that, companies are helping you to activate, as I mentioned before, on site. And the same companies that are helping you on discovery are helping you on ROI measurement. And I'm working now with a company which is relatively new, a couple of years old. Vendelux is based in New York, and they use AI discovery for brands who are looking to identify the right events and also looking to measure their investments on those events. And these technologies are helping the brands, but they're also helping the event organizers because they're helping to put their event information in front of the relevant brands who are looking for those platforms to support their marketing goals.
Fascinating. And can you name any of those technologies or companies or platforms?
Yeah, I just mentioned Bendelux is one. On that category, you have Sproxy as well. You have Covent. Those 3 are trying to help discovery and some sort of follow ROI. In terms of on-site, there are literally hundreds. I mentioned Bizabu as an operating system, for example, or Siva as a portfolio company with every single simple solution. What I usually say is if your company is small, most likely you don't need to interact with different technologies and complicate your life. Or if you are too big, if you are Reed or Informa, you probably use 15 or 20 technology suppliers in your event. But if you are in the middle, most likely I would suggest stick with one solution, keep it simple, and start adding specific features or new companies if you really need it. Event technology could be expensive and difficult to run for companies without the right internal knowledge.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's go back to your comment that virtual events are not dead. This was something that you said in the last interview. You said for the events industry, digital represented less than 2% before COVID. In this interview from 2021, you said the biggest event organizers, they're saying that they need to be at least 15 to 25% digital revenue in the next 3 years, which would have taken them to 2024. Has that come true? Is it higher? Is it lower than you originally expected? How does the relative percentage of digital investment compare today to pre-pandemic?
Growing aggressively. I honestly don't know if 15 or 20 or 10, nobody knows because it's difficult to measure. Let me give you an example. Some events, they're investing a lot in virtual events for online education. Is that digital revenue for an event organizer? I think that it is. Some companies said, no, this is online education, but it's digital. You're not hiring a hotel or a venue. You're not making a production activation face-to-face. And that education will never happen if you are not relevant for that particular industry. I see new digital categories that I was not convinced that will be relevant pre-pandemic, like online education, growing dramatically. And that's fantastic, because if you're a media company or event organizer and you're able to monetize that, you're monetizing content, you're capturing data, and you're increasing engagement with your community, which means all those things together are very strategic for you as an event organizer. It's not only the money, which is of course important, it's the engagement, it's the knowledge, it's the data. And these sort of digital activations are helping them to do that. If you're a brand, same thing. You can really activate content on a way that is attractive, efficient, scalable, and move on-site only on a needed basis. And that's why I think that the digital revolution that we talked 10 years ago, it's happening, and it's different than what we originally thought, because categories like online education are exploding, and honestly, nobody thought it would be so aggressive.
I think it also falls into that triad structure that you talked about before. It's capturing them before the event. It's making sure, obviously, that event is a success, but also some of this educational piece is a way to follow up with your customer after the event. And that after the event, to me, tends to be the most important in terms of relationship building with whatever happened before or during.
I think that the new generation of marketing people, they don't think like I did 30 years ago, before, during, and after. They have a year-long marketing cycle that is blended. And because of that, they don't think that it's just one activation, 3 days, I'm gone. They have a different mindset, which is exactly the right mindset for these days, with this technology, with these customer expectations. And it's, I have this marketing plan for the whole year, and I'm going to activate digital, hybrid, or on-site on a needed basis. I don't care. And that's exactly, if I'm hiring a marketing person, that's the approach that I want to hear. I don't want to hear, I'm going to Vegas 3 days, I'm generating 60 leads. Those days are gone.
And that kind of ties to one of our last questions here, which is your closing advice in your last interview was make sure your digital relationship is deeper than Tinder. Kind of funny to think about, but I think that we are sometimes still stuck in this swipe left, swipe right world. This really aligns with what you're saying about that year-long marketing plan versus thinking about an event in isolation. So how are the best companies doing this today? How are they getting deeper with their relationships in that year-long marketing plan?
I'll go deeper into the Tinder analysis without making problems with my wife. If you have a friend and you just talk with that friend over the phone a couple of times per year, your friendship level is going to be, with time, a little bit more superficial. If you have a relationship with a customer and that relationship is just emails and webinars, same thing. The magic happens face-to-face. I keep saying you build trust face-to-face. You have to find a way to use a marketing funnel from newsletters, emails, content, hybrid, up to the real celebration. I think at Reinventing Life, or The Face of Digital, my previous book, we call the event as the industry celebration. If you go to the event, okay, that's where the magic happens. Because when you're there, you're physically there, your mindset is there, and you're ready for that conversation. I guess that 90% of the audience that will be listening to this, probably they're going to be doing something else. Their attention level is going to be dramatically different attending something like this in comparison with being on a face-to-face meeting, interacting with another human. That funnel, that lead quality is exactly what makes the difference. Which means if you're a marketing person or owner and you really want to cultivate long-term relationships, I'm going to tell you, invest in face-to-face. Do the rest as funneling, qualifying, but be sure that you're meeting, spending time, quality time, great experiences with your customers on a face-to-face environment. And I apply the same concept on my personal life. If I want to have fun with my kids, I try to go to a tennis game or to a concert and enjoy the live experience with them. Those memories are 10x better. Again, at the end, we're human beings. We're pretty simple people, and we enjoy those sort of things. And I bet you if this meeting is face-to-face on the same place, we're having coffee, the serendipity of opening the conversation to many other things is dramatically different. And again, that's where the magic happens.
Totally agree. Let me ask you one final question in closing here. I want you to make some predictions for 2025. We'll probably have you back in 4 more years and see if you're accurate. But if we think about events as a category, companies that get ahead in 2025 will do this one thing when it comes to either their time investment, financial investment in events. What would that one thing be?
Wow. Honestly, I think that for 2025, it's way easier than when you asked me that question. It was 2021. Now it's way easier. I would be surprised if, unless of course some force majeure sort of events happen like COVID, events in 2025 will continue to be very strong, will continue to grow. Probably not at the same pace as what we saw in 24 or 23, but we're still on the hockey stick trajectory. If you are going to spend time and money on events, I will tell you, don't reinvent the wheel. Think on what should be done face-to-face and how do I qualify that face-to-face meeting in order to make it as productive as possible. And how do I follow up on a way that my customer appreciates my brand on a way that will continue to do business with us. But during the 2021 meeting, we were thinking that we don't know when are we going to go back to face. And we were thinking, when we go back, do we really need to meet face-to-face or we can do only these sort of things? Now those questions, I guess, that are pretty clear. Some people disagree, and God bless them. But we all believe that face-to-face is not going away. And you have to prepare your marketing plan in order to make it as effective as possible. And there are plenty of new tools that should help you to do a better job.
Great advice. Marco, thank you so much for being our first return guest. We wish you all the luck in 2025. And thanks again for joining us.
So what's the biggest takeaway from today? The return to in-person events is not a return to business as usual. Yes, live events are thriving. People want to see each other face to face. But the real winners aren't just recreating the past. They're redefining what events mean in this era and why we gather. The brands that stand out are the ones creating year-round engagement, using data to make smarter decisions, and embracing new tools to elevate the experiences of their guests. Because let's be honest, just bringing people together isn't enough anymore. The industry has changed, expectations have changed, priorities have changed, and the events that will stay relevant are the ones that evolve. In our recent Gen Z research, we had one young Gen Zer who said, when I look at then versus now, our priorities have changed, but many of these events have not. She said, I still drink, but many of my Gen Z peers do not. There has to be a more creative way than another happy hour in a showroom. And I think that's a real challenge to all of us. So let's keep it going. I want to encourage you to follow me, Amanda Schneider, on LinkedIn, and also connect with Marco Ghiberti for more insights on where live events are headed next. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Did this topic resonate with you? Sign up for Think Lab's newsletter to stay up to date on our latest research and insights related to industry events and Phygital strategies. Join our newsletter by signing up at the very bottom of Think Lab's homepage online. Design Nerds Anonymous is a proud member of the Surround Podcast Network. Special thanks to the production team, Hannah Vitti and Rachel Senator. Join the conversation on Design Nerds Anonymous. What have we missed? Are you doing something spectacular to lead the Phygital revolution? If so, I want to personally invite you to call our hotline, share your thoughts, and who knows, You could be featured on social channels or possibly even a future podcast episode. Simply call our hotline at 917-934-2942 and make your voice heard.